You're listening to the Cantina Cast, your home for thought-provoking Star Wars talk. Join Albert Jonesy in breaking down the latest news, trailers, movies, and of course, your favorite characters from a galaxy far, far away.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Cantina Cast. My name is Albert Padilla, and this is episode 480, Tribe, our breakdown of the 6th episode of The Bad Batch of Season 2, and one that has been delayed in delivering for us because of a number of things that have caused that delay. You know, winter storms, no power, water, those sort of things that just happen in everyday society here in a first world country. And speaking of first world country and people, Jonesy's with us tonight. Jonesy, welcome to the show. How are you doing, sir?
I'm doing well, man. We have a lot of excitement before every show, it seems like. So my internet goes out like 10 minutes before we're going to come on air.
Tonight?
Tonight. Yeah. So all the stuff that happened from last week, that was just kind of getting pushed back and things kind of kept coming up. And then here, like right about to go on air after a small delay tonight as well. And then it was like, oh, crap, what now? But we're good.
Yeah.
We're going to plow through this really fast.
Yep, this will be about a 20-minute episode. If anybody's wondering, no, it won't be. It'll probably be about an hour. So, but yeah, it's been so. Apologies to anybody that's been waiting for our breakdown. We're probably a little late at this point, but it's a fun enough episode that I think we'll have a good time kind of talking about it. So,
absolutely.
But before we do,
a little bit of quick news here. So we had more celebration guests. So if you were going to London and to Excel Center, you're going to have a great lineup, of course. Some of the highlights from they've had two announced, I think 2 batches released. Mm-hmm. Lately, you got people like Hayden Christensen, you got Gwendolyn
Never
Christie.
Heard of him.
Yeah.
Never heard of her. No.
You got Jat, James Earl Taylor, Katie Sackhoff. Jonas is going to be there, Mads Mikkelsen, Ming-Na Wen. I mean, those are just a handful of all of that. But my real question is, when are we going to start hearing about the panels? Today is February 6th. We're exactly 2 months away from the opening night. When are we going to start hearing some ideas about the panels?
I would imagine, it's, with Celebration, especially the way it went last year, everything seemed like it was just kind of last minute. And I'm not throwing shade on anybody, but my gosh, we were still, we didn't even know like what the stage was going to be like until we got there and, started asking specific questions about things. So for whatever reason, it sounds like they're probably in that same boat. So it may be the week of, it could be that day of. It's just hard to say with what's going on right now. So.
Yeah, but of course, lots of people are hearing back that they're going to be on whatever stages that they applied for and everything. So huge congratulations to all of our friends and kind of coworkers, if you will, out in the biz, and well-deserved, and looking forward to hearing y'all's content. Hopefully y'all record it and put it out online for us to all listen to that aren't able to make it.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I can't wait. I want to see what they actually stream. That's the other question too. Like last year, I remember they were talking about we were going to have a stream option, and that never happened. I don't know if they've kind of promoted that for this year with
they had
panels,
but they had one, but wasn't like what we would assume for one, right? It was like They always had a streaming stage, but that was all basically interviews and Star Wars show type stuff.
Exactly. Yeah.
Not anything else.
Right. Or allowing the people doing the shows, right? The guests and hosts to kind of stream their own option. And a lot of it was bandwidth related. Right. But there's some logistical reasons as to why they can't do that, or they haven't been able to in the past. But hopefully they work through that, because I would like to see some of this stream, since we can't necessarily just drive down the road for this one.
Yeah, this one's a tough. Actually, I was kind of joking with someone that now that we're not there, we'll probably get information faster than what we did when we were there.
That's very true.
Because it seemed like we were some of the last people to actually find out what was going on at Celebration, and we were at Celebration.
Yep, that's as always the case.
But anyway, in other news, though, so the advanced reader copies for High Republic Cataclysm have started to go out as well. This is Lydia Kang's novel. This is going to wrap up phase 2 of the High Republic, at least from an adult novel perspective. So that book comes out April 4th. The embargo is lifted on March 21st. So Lauren will have that covered. I imagine she's probably going to target releasing something, maybe a spoiler-free first look review type of thing on the 21st when the book is actually released. So be on the lookout for that here in about a month and a half. But in the meantime, last week she released her review of the first 3 issues of the Yoda comic book, which is really good. And then tomorrow, she is actually releasing the first 4 issues coverage of the volume 2 of the High Republic. So this is Kevin Scott's run on the High Republic. And with issue 3 and issue 4, it's starting to get pretty good. And then issue 5 comes out this week. But man, it's a really good series. I'm really excited to hear what she's got to say about that one. I think she's been pretty excited about it as well. But so stay tuned on the YouTube channel for that one, cantinacast.com/YouTube, to get all of the Jedi novel archive goodness from Lauren.
Yeah, and if you've not had a chance to subscribe to our channel, please do so. Also, please like and subscribe and comment on these. All of that helps with the SEO and making the rounds and getting the great work that Lauren's putting out there to larger audiences as well. So please consider doing that. And I'm looking forward to it. At some point, we've been talking about bringing that coverage. She's kind of doing these very hyper-focused on the books type coverage. But we will very much likely roll in the High Republic and come back to that once phase 2's over with. And we're going to have Lauren on, and we'll be kind of breaking that down as part of the main show at some point down the road. So I'm looking forward to finally pulling back the seal on volume 2, or phase 2, I should say.
All right. And then in our chat tonight, if you're listening to the podcast, we do a live stream every week, twice a week usually. And cantinacast.com/YouTube once again. And right now in the chat, we got Dale, Steph, Lauren, Emotional Evolution, Jonathan, Nase, and Jeff. Thanks for everyone for coming out so far, being part of the chat. Everyone that's in the background, feel free to chime in. Let us know you're listening. We'd love to hear from you. And we would love for everyone to come out and, like Albert said, go check out the channel. Lots of great stuff on there, old stuff as well. Things that the cool thing about the Cantina Cast and like what our predecessors have done is that some of this content is really kind of timeless on the podcast. We get a lot of back downloads of the podcast just because there's so much really cool content that's always applicable, and it's fun to go back and kind of listen to what the differences of opinion, how things have changed, especially in the Disney era, or even in the last just few years with some of the additional content, like like Tales of the Jedi and things like that have changed it. So lots of great things to go back and kind of reflect on and check those out. Not only when you and I were doing it, but also our peers and predecessors as well.
Yep. Cool. And thanks to all the Patreon members as well. So for all of your patronage, that certainly contributes to paying the bills and doing these types of live feeds, live streams and recordings. And we've got a number of people with us tonight who are part of our Patreon group.
Yeah, we do. Now part of the tribe members: Mike, Rob, Lauren, Dante, Riss, Justin, Jackson, Sharkman, Dan, Daz, Isabella, and Uncle Leon. I don't know, man. Uncle Leon and Sharkman Dan, that's a competition for my 2 favorite names right now.
Yeah, I would agree.
And then Delusions of Grandeur tier, of course, Rod, Kathy, and Hard Countered. Again, thank you everyone so much. We had such a successful year in the Patreon space last year. We hope you enjoyed what Albert and Lauren hosted a couple weeks ago with the Mandalorian Season 1 Top 3 Moments. We're going to come back and do a second session of that, Top 3 for Season 2, as well as we get ramped up and get amped up for Season 3 premiering in just a few short weeks here from Mandalorian Season 3.
Yeah, it's just around the corner. By the way, as an aside, if you've not had a chance to watch Saturday Night Live this past weekend, Pedro Pascal was on there as the host of Saturday Night Live. And I didn't watch it all. I don't remember seeing any kind of Star Wars content, but some of the stuff he did is freaking hilarious, which is just what you'd want to see. I mean, he's got The Last of Us out right now, and that's really kind of what he's promoting. But this guy is like on cloud 9, top of the world. He's got that, and he's got Season 3 of The Mandalorian. So, and you're not going to escape the Pedro Pascal. For a lot of people, that's probably not a bad thing, but he's going to be here to stay for the foreseeable future. So good stuff.
Well, they did a movie
Pedro
with
there.
Nick Cage just last year as well. So,
Yeah,
I mean, how can you? I mean, this guy's on top of the world, man.
I don't like Nick Cage, but okay, if you say so.
Are you damaged?
I know. Okay, we're not going to get into it because this is a film appraisers thing, and I've got a problem with Nick Cage, and I've never had a chance to express my grievances. But now that you brought it up, I think I'm going to go ahead and do so now. I'm kidding. I'm not. Let's get into our main topic now, which was Tribe. And all right, I'm gonna let you go first.
Yeah, because I got questions here for you.
I got questions. I don't know if I have the answers, but I have questions. But give me your kind of initial thoughts on how you felt.
So it was actually kind of a question around this for you as well, because Tribe is actually a redoing of Season 6, The Clone Wars.
Yes.
There was a 4-episode arc it was basically this story. It was supposed to go back and kind of recount why Yoda said what he did in Revenge of the Sith, right? As to why does he have good relations with the Wookiees. So Yoda was actually supposed to be part of all of this, but a lot of the scenes, they showed this back at Celebration 2015, I believe, in Anaheim.
Yes.
Yeah, and so they actually showed some of the unfinished scenes. This is part of the Clone Wars Legacy, I believe they called it back then. So if you go out there and YouTube it, you'll see some of the things, and they are verbatim, spot on, talking to the trees and all of that good stuff. It was written by the same person that ended up writing this episode, so Matt Miknovitz. I hope that's how you pronounce it.
Yeah.
Which is fine. But it was more of a general question here. I liked the episode, but it was more of by them taking that and kind of transposing that into the Bad Batch, but it's kind of rehashing content that was already written, kind of already storyboarded a little bit, things like that. Does that feel, fresh or new, or does it even matter because we've really not seen it? It wasn't released. It wasn't even finished. And it only had a few scenes that were even animated in a super rough way.
Yeah. Okay, so the way I would answer this question is, number one, I enjoyed the episode. Like, there's so much to like about this episode, first and foremost with Gunji, right? Huge fan favorite from back in the Clone Wars. He's front and center. It's kind of focusing on him. So I really did enjoy this. However, I would agree, there were parts of this that did feel like it was almost like Dave Filoni and Matt Miknovitz had set out to do this years ago. It never got finished, and this was their opportunity to kind of seize the moment and bring this episode to a wider audience, right? Part of that feels like Lucas had some say in this, right, in this particular episode as well. So knowing Dave Filoni, I think he was seizing the opportunity to kind of redeem the fact that they never got to get that episode out. Did it work with the Bad Batch? Yeah, I think it worked with the Bad Batch. I felt like they did a pretty good job of kind of bringing those two together. Where I would say, I wouldn't say it fell short, but I felt like it was jumping so fast at about the maybe 15-minute mark, 13-minute mark. It felt like we were just plowing through the episodes. Like, right. I could see the 4-arc episode trying to be condensed down into 20 minutes or 25 minutes or whatever it ended up being. And it just felt like they were progressing through things just very quickly. And that was really the only feedback that I had. So did I enjoy the episode? Heck yeah, I loved it. I love the fact that we got Gunji. Did we get a lot of development from the Bad Batch? No. Did we need it? Probably not at this point. The other thing I think that we kind of toss around during these types of breakdowns when we really haven't seen the full season yet is we just don't know. Like right now, it probably feels a little weird, but holistically, when we look at all 16 episodes, it may make more sense, right? We may be in for a pretty long run of just heavy hitting, content around the clones and the Bad Batch themselves, right? The stuff that all the cloning and all the other stuff that was kind of left hanging there at the end of season 1. If we get 6 episodes, it probably takes the bite out of what we're feeling for this kind of being thrown in here. The other thing I would say is this one didn't feel. I have a question as far as apart from the redemption story that I was mentioning earlier, like there just seems like there's something going on with Gunji here, and I've got my crazy whack, tinfoil hat theories as to what that is, which we'll get to in a little bit, but there could be another reason as to why this episode, I won't say shoehorned, but why this episode was resurrected and brought into here, because I think there may be something longer at play with Dave Filoni and his storytelling in that, quote, Mandoverse or Filoniverse or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, that may very well be the case. I think, and just to make sure it's clear, the Bad Batch were part of the season 6 arc.
That's fair.
That was put into this. So yeah, so the Bad Batch, this was another episode they were supposed to be part of. This is season 6 was when the clone, when we got those episodes redone and finished as part of season 7. So I mean, it makes sense that they would have been, a bigger part of the overall season. Sure. I'm with you. Although there was a part of me that said, reflecting on what you were saying about, it felt like, yeah, we really did shoehorn 4 episodes into 20 something minutes. Mm-hmm. And a part of me is like, I think I'm okay with this, because if we remember, a lot of these arcs in Clone Wars, a lot of them were kind of slow at times. Yeah. And this is one where I could see may have just dragged a little bit. And so I didn't mind the pacing on this one. I thought it was fine that we just kind of picked up, got right into it, went straight to Kashyyyk, and things are just kind of going wrong. And yeah, it was a little bit quick paced. Maybe a couple of episodes may have had a better feel to it, a little better pacing. But overall, I was glad it wasn't 4 episodes.
Yeah.
because I don't know what they would have done in 4 episodes. But I got to be honest though with you, like Wrecker was my favorite moment of this episode. Just like him multiple times, like acting like a Wookiee and beating his chest and growling and laughing and just doing all the motions and like I could get used to this. Of course he says that a lot, but you could tell like this is his environment. Like his inner Wookiee finally got to come out. We found out who his spirit was, right? And it's it's a Wookiee, right? So just so much fun. It was really cool seeing him in that just a really fun, light atmosphere within a pretty heavy scene, right? But I still love that we get this Wookiee versus Trandoshan thing. And the quotes like from Venomore with the 100 Wookiee pelts for who brings me the Jedi.
Mm-hmm.
I love that that's still a staple, and that there's this rivalry between the two. I don't know, not races, but species.
Yeah,
it's still such a thing, and that there's just this animosity, very small scale, of course, but
sure. But
overall,
it also
I love that it survives though.
Yeah, and it helps to kind of reinforce the Black Chrysanthemum and Trandoshan meeting, right from Book of Boba Fett. So it all kind of builds upon that. And for a lot of audiences that didn't watch the Clone Wars, this is their first exposure to it. So it's just providing additional context and background, historic background, or helping to build that relationship, or show you at least what that relationship was like.
And I like that it still ties into like the Aftermath trilogy as well, like from the books, right? Of where they've highlighted the enslavement of the Wookiee race after, and the references of all of this stuff. So I just really like, the connections that you get, even though the Aftermath trilogy came in so many years later. It's still great to see these connections here with what the Empire does to the Wookiees just over and over again.
Yeah. What else did you have? Any other opening thoughts here?
No, that's pretty much my stuff for the rest of the episode, except set blasters to kill.
Yeah. It's funny, you don't hear anybody talking about that when they're killing, but the minute they don't kill clone troopers or stormtroopers, it's like sky's falling. Worst series of all. But
there were no stuns this episode, were there?
Nope.
And actually, it was pretty brutal, man. Shooting Wookiees in the back. One Trandoshan got like capped in 2 or 3 different places and slumped over and yanked out. I mean, if you wanted violence, I guess here's your violence.
Yeah, as violent as the Clone Wars will get, this is about as gory or violent as it gets, if you will.
That's a good point, though. This was definitely Clone Wars through and through, though. Again, most of this series has been, though.
True.
Which I think is totally fine. This is just Clone Wars Part 2, basically.
So the other things I would add are, I enjoy the music. Once again, Kevin Kiner kind of killed it, in my opinion, in terms of what we got on Kashyyyk. Hearing that, I was trying to put that. I didn't get a chance to do it. I've been crazy busy this week, but I didn't have any power. But I was trying to like put that song.
You weren't that busy.
I wasn't doing anything but just sitting around. But I was trying to compare what Kiner did in this episode to what was done in Revenge of the Sith, and I ended to get around to it. It did sound like they had some similar tones there. Either way, I thought it was a really good representation of the Wookiees and what that kind of that mystical connection to the trees, that their spiritual connection that they got with the trees. I think that came out really well in Kiner's music. I did quickly, and we'll maybe touch on this later. If I don't, it's fine. But this was Omega's first exposure to the Force, and I could be wrong. I'm trying to remember if there was any other instance in season 1 where she had any exposure to Jedi or the Force. But I wonder how that's if that will shape her in any ways. Like, she's so quick to fall in line, right? Or fall in line with whatever someone else is doing. We saw it again at the very end there, where she just kind of took a knee and started meditating or talking, communing with the trees there, following Gunji's footsteps. But I just wonder if there's going to be an everlasting effect there. Is that spirituality of the Force, is that going to shape her in some way or influence her in some way? Could maybe not, but it would be interesting to see what kind of what that lasting effect would have. We talked about the moving through everything a little bit, and then the last thing I had was what I said earlier about Gunji and his reason to be in this episode. Like, on its own, I think the episode stands by itself. It kind of puts a bow on what happened post Order 66, what kind of impact it had on all the we already know at large, the galaxy at large has been heavily impacted by the Empire becoming the supreme power. But for Kashyyyk and the Wookiees, it's such a personal kind of relationship that we have with them, to really kind of see that. And then, like you said, finally seeing the specific effects of Kashyyyk and what they were doing, enslaving the Wookiees and using them to do heavy lifting and the mines later on that we get in Solo when they're out there, mining for whatever. So all of that makes sense, and it was good to kind of see all that. But I do wonder if there is something more with Gungi here, a little specifically. But again, more when we get to tinfoil hat theories. But okay, so with that, let's transition now into kind of our breakdown. This episode did something different finally. I mean, well, it was still kind of like okay, they've got a mission type thing, but we didn't get the gratuitous, oh, here's the mission, and we don't really want to do it, but okay, I guess we'll do it kind of thing. We kind of start off right in the middle of them already having accepted this mission.
Right.
But I have a question around, like, I was really trying to figure out, like, who gave them this mission, because they are at this point, working with this Vanguard Axis, right? And they're in the business of slave labor, right? So these guys aren't really good people by any means. Maybe it's Sid, right, that kind of gave him this deal. But do you think they may have gone and got this deal from somebody else, or just taking whatever jobs come available? But I don't know that maybe they didn't know. I mean, that's probably fair, right? They probably didn't know they were in slave labor as well.
Well, and again, go back to the concept of it. I think it probably came from Sid. Sid doesn't ask too many questions, and we know that for a fact, right? So the Vanguard Axis, though, is definitely in smuggling. I don't know how much they knew if they were smuggling, sentient beings or not. That seemed to be a little bit of a surprise. But again, that they were just doing the chips, the identa chips. There we go. That they were just doing those is in an Empire era, so the Empire can't track them. In and of itself isn't necessarily surprising or a red flag within the context of what's going on in the galaxy, I think. Because there's a lot of people that will pay for an identity to get smuggled that might be on the Empire's radar for whatever reason. And we think back to Andor, and again, the reasons why we've seen some of them picked up and they might be being looked at or tracked is all over the place. It's just, there doesn't have to be a good reason for that to be the case, right?
Yeah. And
so I think that what they were doing doesn't necessarily, now anybody in our world that saw this would be like human trafficking, bells and whistles going off left and right.
Sure.
But within a galaxy far, far away, this is an era of tyranny and developing tyranny and fear. And so I think that layer of it tends to put a very different flavor on what they might think they're doing. And again, they just don't ask too many questions. And, Sid can say what she wants, but a deal is a deal to her too, at the end of the day. I think there are certain things that if she were to find out about it, she would not go forward with the mission.
Right.
But as long as she can claim blissful ignorance, I think she's okay enough to keep going to this well until it runs dry. Because like she said a few episodes ago, this well is going to run dry at some point. The Empire is going to shut this all down. So make the money while you can. And this seemed like it was going to be a pretty big payday from these droids. Yeah.
And they never really and not that it was necessary, but again, wondering what they were doing with these chain codes. If it was for, I mean, like you said, it could be used for a number of different things. It's basically hiding your identity in some way, right? And you would think that Tech would have kind of engineered these or created these agnostic, right, blank checks that they could kind of assign to anybody if they needed to kind of hide them. So, that could be everything nefarious to something that's goodwill and intended. I think we know now that it probably was, coming from a bad place given what these droids were already doing, but it's really not that important. There was one moment there that I thought was hilarious too. If you notice, the droid, like the main guy that they walk up to, who's got the bandolier or the grenades on his bandolier,
Right.
he's a droid. Yet he's sitting on a desk with a keyboard and a monitor, like typing things in. And I'm thinking, why wouldn't he just plug in? But okay, it's fine. I get it. Aesthetically, it makes sense that we can relate to it. But so, and then the other part, and I want to touch on something, and I swear I'm not getting it. Miss Sunflower brought it up. It's not me, Jonesy. Please don't get mad at me, but she's asking the right question. She says, anyways, do you think Omega could be force sensitive? I saw some fans throwing that theory around. Now, we've been talking about this in season 1. I know we've toyed with it. Okay, I've been toying with it. You look at me like I'm crazy. I actually saw somebody that compiled a list of like every episode where there was one moment in the episode that hinted at her being force sensitive. I haven't gone through and done that, but every episode there's something that happens and I'm like, oh, there it is. That's another sign that she is. And I get it. Some of it's so light and it's really stretching, right, to kind of grasp at that. But for this episode, her sitting there on the bench or on the stairs, and because her and Omega, or her and Echo, were kind of left behind to kind of watch the ship, but she makes that she didn't say it, but she might as well have said, I got a bad feeling about this, right? She said something's not right here. Like, she was feeling that something was not wrong. Now, granted, they were in a very shady kind of establishment, and so yeah, you would think naturally she would think that, but
I mean, Echo thought the same thing. So is Echo force sensitive?
yes. But
Okay.
that'll be teased out in season 3.
Oh, okay. I just thought I'd ask because I mean he was
Well,
uncomfortable
no,
too.
he's older, wiser, and he knows that he can't let her think that she came up with that, and somehow he overlooked all that. So he was just making it up. Is really what.
Well, I
that
think
happened.
I knew this was going to come up, and I
Did
get
you?
it. With
Oh.
I did. I mean, because you had that scene, plus you had at the scene at the very end where both she and Gunji are laying hands on the trees and communing with the
Mhm.
trees, right?
Yeah.
And again, we'll kind of talk more about what that actually means in some of this, but I'm still not sold. Like there hasn't been anything really clear and just completely verbose right in your face.
Mm-hmm.
That says here's what it is. And I get that would be terrible storytelling if you did some of that, but to me, the things that people are pulling out are pretty stretchy. I mean, they're pretty stretchy.
I know,
to get there.
All
And
right.
so maybe. I mean, clearly there's something special about her besides being an eternal optimist and having a lot of fun.
Well,
And a female clone.
me in a nutshell. So thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Eternally
But
optimistic.
again, I'm ready for them to resolve or to begin to start to resolve that. I think just
for sure.
I mean, in general, right?
Yep.
Let's make
Yep.
progress on whatever this is that Omega is. If there's something really truly special and unique about her, let's start to tease that out a little bit more in more overt ways, rather than just kind of it's kind of this undertone, speculation from basically from the fans. I'm sure this is fun for Filoni and company. And it's fun for us. I'm not
for
complaining.
sure.
I'm really not complaining. It's fun to have the debate, and we give each other a hard time just because we like to, But I mean, I'm ready for them to develop that out. Like, what is special about Omega? Why is she a female clone? I mean, I want to understand that part of it, and that part's kind of been lost in all of this.
Yeah.
Why was she so special to Nala Se?
Mm-hmm.
And so there's a lot of, like you talked about at the start of the show, there's a lot of loose ends that we didn't really tie up after season 1, and we've not even acknowledged that they exist anymore.
Yeah.
So when is it we're going to come back and start to revisit some of those tones?
Yeah, I think the beginning will likely be next episode, next 2 episodes, maybe. Right? There's a high potential that we'll at least start asking some of those questions or teasing them out a little bit.
Seems
maybe
like
not everything.
Seems like we're ready for it in these next 2 at least, title wise.
Yeah, title wise, exactly. All right, more on that later. At some point, we'll do a Patreon show called Why is Omega Special, and we'll break all the theories down. Write that down. We're going to do that. Okay, so, all right, so that leads us to Omega playing hide and seek. We hear the Wookiee howl, and we get that whole scene there. I thought it was great. I mean, we were already spoiled with Gunji, pulling the lightsaber out and igniting it, but we've used it as the title card, which was awesome. And then Gunji's reaction once all that the hype, the fight breaks down and it's over with, and they've kind of they get out of there. I mean, even just his reaction to Echo at first, and then much later. Right. This is why I've been saying since season 1, why are they still wearing their freaking clone outfits? Like, just change them. Like, and I'm being facetious in some ways because I get there's marketing behind it, and we've got to be able to identify with the characters. But
and their kit is pretty unique and things like that too. I mean, you can explain it right away, but no, I mean, you're absolutely right. I mean, to me, they don't blend in at all. I mean, but even like Hunter, even Hunter's face tattoo seems to be fading a little bit. I don't know if you've noticed this, but it does seem to be fading a little bit. So it's not as pronounced. And I don't know if that's intentional or if that's just me, my mind kicking into gear and being Cantina cast mode or what, but it does seem to be less and less there. But I did like that you had that tension though. I mean, you had that, there was still something there. It was very much like Kanan, and anybody else that's come across as even with Rex and some of these other situations with Ahsoka, there's just innate fear of what is it like. We don't know who these people really are anymore. We don't know if we can trust them. They turned it back, but I like that the Bad Batch and Hunter in particular and Echo understood that, and tried to say the right things. And I thought they actually did a pretty good job. I mean, Hunter actually is shown a bit of growth here in this episode with how he's handling things and how quick he is to jump in. And like, when they, when Echo, prompts them like, hey, we need to join ally, we need to join up with here and take care of them. They had our backs, we need to have theirs. Yeah, and so we're starting to see this momentum start to gain. But I like that we've not lost the tension though, and just forgotten that the Jedi, were betrayed. And even when they're seemingly doing the right thing for you, what for what purpose, right? And that's where Omega is something special in you, because she doesn't look like them. She certainly doesn't act like them.
Right.
And she's very personal.
Yeah. There's almost like an empath kind of quality to her. And I'm not saying, again, I'm not going into the Force sensitive piece of it all, but just being able
Some
to
people are just
connect to
natural,
people.
right?
Yes. Right.
Yeah.
So maybe that's her ability, right? Her special ability at some point. I think all of that will get exposed.
She's going to be a
eventually.
psychotherapist when she grows up.
That could be it. Who knows? So I got a question too about Gunji, because they talk about it. It's never really fully explored. I think we're left to kind of let our minds wonder, but they never mention who the buyer was. They just mentioned that the buyer was willing to pay a handsome price for Gunji, and
Right.
It's so quick to go to somebody like the Empire, right? From cloning, midichlorian harvesting, whatever it is that they're doing. But any ideas as to who else would be that? Because I mean, they went through such a huge. The Emperor went through such a huge ordeal. I just laughed at my own joke there. Ordeal to kill all the Jedi, right? And now it feels like, oh man, I killed too many of them. I need these guys to do whatever it is, which we assume is Snoke and cloning and contingency plans for his life or the afterlife and all of that. But outside of somebody like Palpatine, I mean, who would be wanting Gunji as a Force sensitive, Jedi?
I think it's not the Empire. I think it is someone who thinks that they can make a buck in some way. And maybe that eventually is selling back to the Empire for something.
Yeah.
At the same time, people think that they can make money off of the Empire. And I mean, those people are stupid, for lack of...
Naive, very young and naive still.
No, they're stupid. Yeah, but I mean,
Okay.
they're really naive because they don't really understand how the Empire truly works yet, because they haven't had that firsthand experience.
Fascism and dictatorship at its finest.
But we've seen it, of course, in numerous places where they just show up on your doorstep and say, we don't like what you're doing, so we're just going to go ahead and install someone else and take over.
Right. Yeah.
Right. And if you get in the way, then, well, it was nice knowing you.
Yep.
Yeah. So, I mean, but again, I don't think that's the Empire, because I think these droids are a little more calculating than that, and they probably would have mentioned the Empire.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's a pretty big buyer, I guess. But yeah, at the same time, I'm really curious, though, with Palpatine at this point. And the more I've thought about this, is his arrogance has got to be just through the roof right now.
Oh, yeah.
So why would he even be developing a contingency at this point? He's not sensed the disturbance. I mean, he did have the setback with Vader over, Vader now versus Anakin Vader. But has he already started setting a backup plan in motion? How many years was that in development? Or did that become a little bit later on as we get a little closer to the original trilogy timeline, where he starts to sense this disturbance, Empire Strikes Back, and has to start putting those plans in place because he wasn't sure this was going to go to spec. And he started having doubt because there started to be other paths, even though he was seeing clearly in his perspective. Clearly there was something else going on that maybe started to bother him a little bit, that he felt that was necessary. I just don't know if it started this early, though.
No, and I would agree. Like, at least in my head, I don't think he was thinking about this until a little bit later. Maybe with the events of Rogue One, the potential that they would have plans and kind of ruin a foil this ultimate space station kind of thing. Maybe that's what did it. It was probably like, for him, it likely came by way of Force visions, right, of some sort. But you're right. I think it would. From in my head, it developed.
You figure
a little
Rebels
bit
has
later.
got to be a part of it too. With
right.
with both Ahsoka and Kanan and Ezra showing up, all of a sudden the Jedi have a presence again.
Yeah, feeling the unbalance or things shifting in that regard.
Right.
I'm with you. I think it probably did come a little bit later, and I wouldn't expect him to do anything right now around contingency for his own life. He's always been he's always been infatuated with eternal life. We know that, even as far back as Revenge of the Sith. So from that perspective, yeah, I mean, he probably at least has been thinking about that. Not necessarily, oh man, I'm going to die and I need a way to live beyond that. But I think it's more around, how do I extend the current life that I have? So it could be starting there, but I still think that's a little bit later. I don't think he's really, looking at what was the operation called now? I just drew a blank from Battlefront 2.
Right, yeah.
So,
I'm thinking I may have to go reread the Dark Empire comic series.
oh yeah, yeah.
All the cloning that was going on there.
That was
a little
heavy,
much.
heavy in cloning. Okay, so yeah, good question around. Well, it's my question, but thank you for answering.
Fantastic question, Albert.
Fantastic question. If I do say so myself, around who the potential buyer was for Gunji. So I want to ask you too, because I know you've been. I wouldn't say you're not against it. I know you're not against it, but we've really enjoyed a full season and 5 episodes now with no Force sensitives and no Jedi and no lightsabers, and this seems like it's contained, and I don't think we're going to see any more of it in the Bad Batch. But how did you feel about that? Did it do anything? Like, was
when
it
I
your
saw the
worst fears
trailer
coming true?
Yeah, when I saw the trailer, I did have a lot of concerns about whether this was the path it was going. I think if I'm trying to remember our conversation, I think we mentioned that it could be a pretty self-contained, episode. And again, it makes sense that Jedi still keep coming up, and the way that they put it in this episode, I think worked really well. They're doing a job, and they stumble over trafficking, and it's trafficking with Jedi.
Right.
They
weren't
looking,
seeking it out.
Right. Yeah, and a young Jedi at that.
Yeah.
Right, and someone that Omega, and so to me, it just fit really well. And I thought they did a really nice job of this, to where it did feel like it was all more or less self-contained. And we don't have to revisit this if we don't want to. It's not important to the Bad Batch story, but it is another ally that they can go and pull from if they need to, if in certain events. But again, like Hunter said, there's nowhere safe for a Jedi in this galaxy, especially for a young one. And so the best thing for them is to still lay low, and to be with their people, and to take care of one another in that regard. So I think this actually worked really well. It worked better than I probably would have expected it to. And I like that it did have a nice kind of a bow on top of it, wrapped up nice and neatly in this case. And we don't necessarily have to go back. And again, it didn't bother me at all. I didn't even think twice about it after a while. Like, this makes sense. Yeah, this works.
Yeah, I'm with you. It felt innocuous enough. I don't think we're going to see. I mean, I've got this question a little bit later, but I've got some opinions that are probably in line with what you're talking about here. So from there, we get, he's reluctant to get on the ship again, echoing, and he's got some level of trauma given he survived Order 66. We don't know where he was. I would assume he was in the Jedi Temple, somehow got away. Maybe he was with Grogu. Wouldn't that be something? More on that later, though. But somehow he survived, and he's been kind of on the run, right, this whole time. I think they talk about that as far as this life that he's been living, just trying to stay low and not use his lightsaber. Although he was quick to use it whenever he got it.
Oh, he was not bashful about pulling that thing out any chance he had.
Not at all. But that's where we love him. I just love his lightsaber too. That he's got it made of sheerwook, the hilt, which is really cool. And then we get onto the ship, and there's this whole conversation that's going with him, right? He's not trusting the clones. I did like the little callback to the ration tin from Empire Strikes Back. We got to see that as a little Easter egg that was going on there. And then we get Hunter out of nowhere, and maybe I missed this, but where the heck did he learn how to speak Shiruk? Like, it seems like everybody can speak it when it's appropriate, and we're just like, oh, okay, I guess they do too. But
they could understand it. And again, so it's predicated that they've interacted with the Wookiees before.
Right, and they mentioned that, yeah.
Yeah, and so I think they've had some experience with them, and which I think is fine. I mean, you pick up a little bit, and again, I like that he wasn't an expert. He kind of understood enough, but then they brought tech in to do the translating. Yeah, so that he had a few words, and he kind of understood, generally what was going on. I thought it was a nice fit. I mean, it was good not having a translator all the time, because that gets a little annoying.
Yeah,
but I think they balanced it out pretty well.
Right. Yeah, and they didn't really have him talking a whole lot. It was a little bit more muted, so it wasn't throwbacks to the holiday special in any way, which was good, right? I can only take Wookiee talk in short amounts. Otherwise, I'm just like, what am I listening to here?
I did have a question for you for the Wookiees though, and maybe jumping a little bit ahead here. Was that Tarful?
So I don't think it is. I
think season 6 was supposed to be Tarful.
I think he was too.
Yeah.
However, I don't know. I don't know. In the credits, in the credits there at the very end, he's not listed. And you would think a character that was so well established from Revenge of the Sith,
they would have slipped it in there.
They would have slipped that in there. Like, they would have called him that. Okay. And it looked like him. Like, don't get me wrong. Like, at first I thought I was like, holy crap, maybe it is him. And it could have been him. But I think it probably, maybe it was too many connections, too much, too quickly, or it just wasn't relevant. And maybe it made more sense from a storytelling perspective just to make it any Wookiee, so that way it's not, somebody that's well known. I mean, it would have been cool. I wouldn't have, argued or disagreed or said that this was a bad connection, but because sometimes Star Wars can feel very close and close knit in terms of like everybody's related to everybody and everybody knows everybody, which was a problem that I had with Legends. So I do like the fact that it was just a Wookiee and it wasn't necessarily somebody that we had already established in a previous series or movie.
Okay.
But it did look like him. I would agree. Okay, so they get to Kashyyyk, and there's a moment right before they get there. I don't know if you noticed, but Wrecker is like eating some of the rations, and he looks over at Gunji, and then he hands him the rations, and Gunji like takes it immediately and starts eating it. So it's just little things like that that are off camera or off to the side that are happening that I think they do a really good job. I love the fact that Echo is so like he's on top of like where the Empire is and always thinking 3-4 steps ahead. I mean, he's a really good. They're not. It's not so much overt.
Yeah,
but they're really subtle. It's very subtle. But man, they're really allowing him to kind of leverage the experience that he had as part of Rex's team and all that wisdom that he has, right? And just that kind of sixth sense around what kind of situational the dangers that may be around. So I have enjoyed that, even though it's not again overt. It's subtle in a lot of ways.
Yeah, and again, he's pitching his interest to Hunter a couple of different times here. It wasn't as much arguing. Like Hunter didn't have to be convinced. He heard it and was like, yes, this is the direction we need to go. Yes, I agree. And they just go forward with it. And so I like that we're not having that banter and that argument, is that we do start to see the path of the Bad Batch starting to getting closer to being more defined as a straight defiance of the Empire and an actual opposing force to the Empire, rather than just trying to survive and then go retire on a beach.
Yeah. It's interesting. I didn't really spend a lot of time kind of thinking about this, but it did cross my mind. They're bringing him to Kashyyyk to kind of be with his people. He's essentially going into hiding, similar to what they did with Luke Skywalker, right? They hit him on Tatooine, on this kind of remote planet. Not that Kashyyyk is remote, but it's a very large planet. There are a number of Wookiee tribes out there. So, he's a needle in a proverbial haystack at this point. But there are some similar parallels there. And that's where, same thing with like Rey and a number of other characters. But, my tinfoil hat stuff kind of leads me to think that there's a reason why they've done this. And, it's poetry. It rhymes kind of thing, right? We're seeing some more Lucas behaviors and patterns evolving here. So they talked about no laser swords. He didn't listen to that. I mean, he pulls it out the front the minute he's got a chance there. But this whole thing, we've talked about this ad nauseum at this point. So I don't want to turn it into were the Jedi wrong for taking children at such an early age? But man, like I was feeling for him at this point, because he had to have been lifted at a very, very young age. Of course, we saw him. For anybody that doesn't know, he was in the Clone Wars in a few episodes, and we got to see him there. But he was taken relatively young, like most kids are, most Force sensitives are. And him being returned to this planet, it's like it's almost like taking a infant animal of some sort out of the wilderness, bringing them, allowing them to recuperate and live, and then going, oh, okay, now go live out in the wild, even though you've never been able to do so. And are you setting them up? Of course, it's not the same situation here, but it's very similar in that nature. But I did feel for him, because like it was all kind of new experience. Like he even says it was only in dreams. Like he doesn't remember like traditions and customs and who his family was, who his tribe was at this point. I mean, I'm making some assumptions here, but he did feel like a stranger in a strange place in a lot of these scenes. You can just see it on his face as he was looking around.
It did, but I also like that the aspect of wander, right? Where he just has kind of like what Omega early on, when she didn't, she saw dirt and grass and blue, color basically, right? And I like that we get that through Gunji's eyes, where he just this amazement that it's been this lingering dream at most, and to actually see it and for it to be real and to be around people that are like him, for the first time in any real consistent capacity has got to be terrifying in some ways, but also really exciting, and also understanding a connection. And I like that we get the discomfort and the uneasiness as he watches how his elders, do things, and then trying to mimic them and understand them, and doing kind of his part in trying to integrate and experience what it is they have to offer as well.
Yeah.
And try to find and be open to a new home in some way. For someone who's never known, many Wookiees. Probably I don't know how many Wookiees is actually known. Probably not very many.
None that I'm aware of, because I mean, unless there's some unknown Jedi that was working a clerical desk there in the temple.
Oh, there probably
that was a Wookiee. Yeah, I'm sure there was, but yeah,
I'm sure there were Wookiee Jedi. Yeah,
yeah.
I mean, there were in Old Republic. We know there were in High Republic rather.
Sure.
As well.
Yeah, but not during the era of
none that we saw.
Windu and Yoda, right?
Right.
The prequels. And there are some parallels to just kind of briefly around Omega. I mean, she kind of makes the comment like, "Hey, they're doing the same thing. We lost our home. You lost your home. We're both victims of the Empire." So there are some parallels there as well. So which I think was the reason why she was so attached to him in a lot of ways. Like, she was the one that was bringing him food. She was the one that was kind of talking to him. That the empath coming out there, and then certainly at the very end there, where she took a knee, even if it was just ceremonial, right? For somebody to be with him in that moment, she felt like he needed that, right? So he didn't feel alone and isolated. I think a lot of that speaks to Omega's heart and what she, again, just that we've had similar stories here in terms of what's happened to us because of the Empire, which was kind of nice to see.
Right. Albert, do you know what rhymes with empath?
No.
Kinrath.
Oh.
So in the show,
nice segue. Wow.
Insert Albert obligatory KOTOR ramble.
Yeah. Okay. So the Kinrath were in Knights of the Old Republic, and no, I won't get into it. But it was good to see them, because you do spend some time, if you play Knights of the Old Republic, you do spend some time Kashyyyk,
Mm-hmm.
and you do have to fight these things, and they're not easy to fight. Their introduction was kind of signaling, of course. I mean, I don't know if you've watched any of these Clone War episodes. When they show you something like that and it goes away, it's like, oh, it's coming back, and it's probably, going to turn the tide. But it was cool to see Gungi use like the animal bond force ability, right, to kind of speak to them. I didn't get a sense that, okay, all Wookiees can talk to these things. I think it was really him using the force to kind of commune with them and let them know that, hey, we're not trying to hurt you. We're just trying to pass through all of this. So I always love that, because it reminds me of Ezra, who was obviously really strong in that, but
right.
It was a nice little moment there for him to use his force powers.
It was.
We talked about already a little bit about the next part, which is, Omega's parallel and the promise to find his people. We had the tanks that were there. The Trandoshans are finally we get to see Commander Venomar, I think was his name in here. And just that enslavement of the Wookiees, first and foremost, up front and center, finally in something on television here, which was kind of nice.
And whipping the Wookiee too. That was brutal. That
was
unexpected.
And that's always been, as far as I can remember, that's always been kind of Legends material, right? Even back from the Solo stuff, the Solo books back in the 70s, early 80s, they'd always kind of talked about some of that stuff. So again, seeing it firsthand, I think we got some of it in Solo Star Wars Story.
I think we got a little bit of it in season 1 too, with the
Bad Batch.
Yeah, with Bad Batch. I forgot what the cat like. That they're like starts with a Z.
It's where she got her. Where she got her bow. No, they had the whip. Yeah, I forget the names, but yeah, similar. We got to see that. But really, this was kind of Gungi's moment to shine, right? Ignite the lightsaber and taking out the tank. We got to see him like really kind of display some of the skills that he had acquired at the Jedi Temple. I mean, he'd been there a while, right?
So he's pretty proficient. Yeah,
he is proficient. Yeah. And this is where, at this moment, this is where I felt like they were just kind of plowing through episodes of that arc, because it was like, oh, there's a fire. Oh, the fire's out. And now we move on to the next piece. There was really not a whole lot there for us.
There was a lot of digging in this episode off screen. Yeah.
A lot of digging, a lot of extinguishing of flames. And then we get the big moment, which was the Malayas. Those are the tiger monkey looking things that
the lizard things that George Lucas was always a huge fan of.
Yep. And so for anybody that doesn't know kind of the background, what Jonesy was talking about earlier, back in 2015 in Anaheim, they were kind of talking about this, and the way the concept was supposed to go was the Wookiees had kind of a spiritual bond with these types of creatures. And in Legends, they rode like lizards and all kinds of other stuff. But I think this was going to be like the official canon mount, if you will, for the Wookiees. And the story goes that Filoni had put out one iteration of what these would look like. Lucas didn't like it, and so he stuck a Post-it over the face and redrew the face of it. And Lucas said, yeah, that's the one. And so that's what they went with. And they showed that concept art at Celebration, and we never saw it again. And so here we go. We bring it front and center. There was also something I found that said the original idea that riding the creatures would represent the Wookiees, having been in a religious practice for this with the species who would not have liked riding otherwise. So these were like nothing you could just normally tame or anything like that. It was because they had this special bond that they were able to kind of mount these things, and they can climb trees because they're kind of like, you know, tigers, and it all made sense. So it was cool. I enjoyed seeing them. Like it was a big surprise when they finally showed them in the trailer.
Yeah. I mean, they're ugly, but yeah, they were kind of cool.
They are ugly, and they had to make them different colors, which I didn't really like, but I get it. For me, sells toys, or it's easier for kids to associate with colors.
Right.
At that point, we're introduced to Yana, who's the village elder. I did enjoy. Again, I don't know how much. There's not really a whole lot to talk about. I just haven't seen a lot of people talking about it in general. But the way the Wookiees kind of meet each other and they greet each other with the foreheads touching.
Right.
We saw that in Solo. You know, we've seen it in a number of other places. But getting to see Tarple, or whatever his name is,
Right.
I gave him a name. Yeah, not Tarple. Getting to see him meet the village
Wookiee
elder.
Warrior #1.
Yeah, they didn't even list him in the credits. Like, he's not even listed at all, even though he had a voice. So whatever. But yeah, Gunji and Yana do the same thing. And I did like Hunter here. Right. He has that line where he says, "Jedi or not, he's still a child. He needs his people," which I thought was pretty big of Hunter. He seems to be I like that. We've always talked about him being that father figure to Omega, and he certainly fits that role in many of these episodes. But he does seem to have a very big heart and is very conscious minded about these children and what's happening to them for whatever reason. And even going back to like, what was it? What was the arc with the clone that was out? He left and he had a family and Cut. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Even with like Cut, right, and that whole kind of family aspect and the children and understanding how it's important, you know, as that father figure role to take care of the children. It just speaks to, you know, him maturing into that position in this role. We'll see what that does with Omega and his relationship a little bit later, but again, more reinforcement and.
I think we've seen a shift though in Hunter though too, because I think he's finally, you know, perhaps accepted it that these kids are growing up in war, and there's not a whole lot that can really be done by that, because he knows that they're all exceptional people, and you know, she included, I think, in that too. We've seen her skill and her compassion, and this is what she wants to do. She wants to help people, but knowing that you're not going to have a normal childhood or peace, you know, and anything that he can do to help, you know, bring that and give that to her before she gets too old to not be able to enjoy it. I think he would want to do that, but also the realism has set in that the likelihood that's going to be the case is quickly dwindling at the very best, you know?
Right. Yeah, unless there's sweeping changes, which aren't going to happen for a number of years to come. So,
right.
There's this is a piece that came up, or I guess this whole thing about the lightsaber marks in the tank, and you know, Venomer says, "Hey, no, let's not let the Empire know." You know, it could be partially that he's interested in capturing a Jedi. It could be that he's trying to, you know, kill more Wookiees, whatever it is. I don't want to say it was kind of plot armor, but because he never reports this, then when we get to the end of the episode, the Empire doesn't know anything about Gunji at this point. Like, he is, for the most part, I would say he is well hidden, and there's the likelihood of them ever discovering him as a Force sensitive. Now, he may still be, you know, found at some point, but that's gone. That's all lost now at this point, because he decided not to call it in. Right? Had he called it in, you would have guessed there would have been. Who knows?
Storm the castle. Yeah.
Yeah. Exactly. But
yeah, I mean, but again, because it's fortune and glory, right? I mean, and again, the rivalry between Wookiee and Trandoshan, you know, that he would want to make a statement with that, and you know, that be his kill, or that be his capture at the very least, right, and say that he owns not only a Wookiee, but a Wookiee Jedi. I mean, that's like got to be the pinnacle for a Trandoshan, especially if this is what they do for sport, this is what they do for fun. Imagine having a Jedi Wookiee pelt.
Yeah.
I mean, and granted, again, we get the whole line of, you know, 100 pelts, you know, whoever brings me the Jedi, you know, he wants it.
Right.
And so, I mean, that's I like that we still get that, and that he didn't report to the Empire. To me, it makes total sense because, and we see this a lot. People want to take credit; they want to secure it and take credit for it, and then see what they can get out of it.
Yeah.
Later on, why tip your hand when you don't have to? And if he can, it doesn't. There's no other Imperials around now because they've, been shot, for the most part.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, it's a matter of why not, take the opportunity that's given to you, and he has enough confidence to think he can go do it.
Yeah, and in response to that, he decides, or Venomer says, raise the jungle, basically burn it all down, kind of thing,
Right.
and kind of get them to come out. Which it was interesting because Yana, as the elder, like her first instinct is we got to run, and it makes sense, right? They've been on the run. They've really kind of had their tail between their legs, if you will, because of the Empire being there. But it's Echo who kind of steps forward and says, "No, we've got to return the favor. We got to stand with you guys." Of course, Hunter jumps in. There were times in that battle, and I'm not nitpicking this battle, but man, we've seen the Bad Batch go up against crazier odds and do more amazing things than what they did in this battle. Like I thought, this is really, there's no threat here. Like it was clear to me that they were going to win this.
Right.
It was cool, not to jump ahead. There was cool. I don't know if you noticed when he picks up the tank or the skiff or whatever it was, he uses it as a shield. It's a throwback to that very first Clone Wars or the Bad Batch episode. You remember when they said, let's execute plan whatever, and
Right.
he turned into a big shield essentially, and they charged forward. It was very similar to that, which I thought was kind of neat. But yeah, I mean, there was really, I don't think they were really ever in danger. I do want to talk about this consulting with the trees. There was something bothered me. I saw somebody earlier over the weekend that said, "Oh, they're just kind of stealing Avatar," and I'm like, dude, this was like
Now, George Lucas actually had this conversation back like in 1977 or 78.
Yeah.
I mean, This is how far back communing with the trees and Kashyyyk all go back to. George was talking about this in the 70s.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's not, I mean, and it's not specific.
It's not unique. It's not unique anyway, right?
Exactly. Right. I mean, this is, you talk about there's plenty of cultures, everything from Shintoism to, other cultures and religions where this is kind of, done as part of practice. And so it's not unique in that regard. But I did enjoy, I mean, if there's any one species in Star Wars that is going to have the ability or be that, in tune with the Force because of how much they rely on the Force, it's going to be them, or I guess the Ewoks, but they eat dirt and rats, so it's probably not the case. Or people, whatever.
People.
Yeah, people and rats. So I don't want to give them too much credit here. And then we finally hear that line from the trailer, "We'll take all the help we can get," which I would never have thought he was talking about trees.
This was not on our radar.
Not on our radar. We would have never called this one. So from there, we get into the trees plan and, drawing them. They used and leveraged the Kinraths, right? Once again, which was great to see. We got to see Gunji again. He goes raging with his lightsaber, gallivanting all over tanks and whatever else.
And it was interesting. You never see Gunji actually kill anybody. Like
True.
There was no, like Gunji doesn't get any kills credited to him, at least on screen. Everything else was a blaster bolt. Even deflections, they were always kind of ricocheted outwards.
Yeah. Well, that's good. I mean, I think it would speak to how much he's still in tune with the light, given everything he's gone through. Because I think it would have been pretty easy for him to just say, you know what, F these guys, and just start mowing them down with a lightsaber. I mean, what's he got to lose at this point, right?
Now, granted, he did go for killing blows, so I'm not saying he wasn't above, putting down Venomore. Like whenever he cut the flamethrower in half and came out from the trees to try to get death from above him. But I mean, still, I mean, he was still channeling some aggression there. Make no mistake. But at the very least, he wasn't. I don't think he was trying to kill. Whereas everybody else was like, no, we're not going to stun anybody anymore.
Yeah, no, everybody's dying. Jeff, quickly going back to our conversation about the trees, George Lucas was probably communing with trees in the 70s, to be honest. Well, there were a lot of drugs in the 70s, Jeff, and I think a lot of people were communing with just about everything during that time.
He did go to USC, so.
Yep.
Odds are high.
Odds are high that he found some LSD there at USC. And this is where we got, I think like you mentioned earlier in the opening comments about Wrecker, and I mean, there's a moment there where he's like banging his chest and making Wookiee calls and everything else, which was really great to see him kind of in his element and among his people, if you will.
Right. I mean, even like at the table and at the very end, he's like talking in Wookiee speak. I just love it. I mean, it's just perfect. Of all the people, you could just know this is just him. This is his best life.
Yeah. And of course, the Kinraths kind of turned the tide It's interesting too. If you notice, all of the our heroes never make any aggressive moves towards the Wookiees. I think it's even, I want to say Gunji like turns off his lightsaber at one point when he's
backs
confronted with
down.
one.
Yeah, backs down and presumably uses the Force to say, "I'm not a threat.
Right.
I served you dinner on a platter. Have fun."
Yeah. This is more food than you've had in the last 2 years. So yeah, it was that was great that we got to see them kind of come in, save the day. Them being the Kinraths and of course Kotor. And then we get to the Gunji versus Venomar fight, and this is where I felt like his. I mean, granted, I mean, like I said, he's part of, he's in tune with the light, but as we've seen in the High Republic, and just about every other Jedi tale, I mean, if their life is at risk, it's them or their foe. I mean, they're not going to hold back. I mean, it's in self defense. So I don't think he was really holding back here. Again, it's a kid show, but had he had the opportunity, I think he would have done something more. But I wonder if his plan all along was really kind of to lure him into the spiders taking him rather than the Kinraths, rather than taking him down with the lightsaber. But I don't know. Part of me thinks that he might have would have had the opportunity. He would have done so.
Yeah, I don't know if he thought that far in advance. I guess they would have known that they were in the area because clearly they were. But I didn't see any webs. Well, he said, I probably wasn't looking that closely. Actually.
No, they did. There's a moment there where they said, I forget who it is, but someone says, draw them into the nest, or they draw them this way.
Early on that was because that's how they kind of stormed the castle.
Yeah.
I didn't know if all of that was still back further on when they started torching everything as well.
I see. Yeah.
Yeah. But regardless, I think it makes a lot of sense, that they would still be around, and whether Gunji lured them in there or not, I don't know that it was on his mind. Again, a little bit younger Jedi, maybe not thinking 12 steps ahead. He seems to jump into action without much pretense.
Yeah.
So I don't know that would have been the case, but I like that he was still centered enough to where he could see it back down, kind of go within himself again and say, nature take its course,
Mm-hmm. There's when the spiders come down, the music that Kiner uses was, for me, I mean, we've heard this before, but I always associate the harp or whatever it is that they're plucking there to make that little spider noise, right? Or spider music, as I would call it. I immediately thought Raiders of the Lost Ark again, because in Raiders of the Lost Ark, when they're at the very beginning, when they're in the cave with the fertility idol, right? And all the tarantulas, we get that same plucking. I swear it's the same thing he's doing that John Williams did in that movie, but I could be wrong.
I wouldn't be surprised. Yeah. I mean, there's been enough references to date,
Right. This whole season has just been a love letter to the Indiana Jones series.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and then we finally get to the, and of course Venomar's tied up and he dies, and so with him goes the knowledge that a Jedi was ever on Kashyyyk, which is good, bodes well for his future and future potential episodes of him returning at some point. But and then the aftermath, we get more of the fire extinguishing. Again, this is where I felt like they were just kind of like, okay, we got to wrap this thing up. And that's where, I didn't get to say this earlier, but had they just kind of given it maybe even like 5 more minutes and kind of let us breathe and sit in some of these moments, maybe that would have changed things. Again, I enjoyed the episode. I'm not saying I didn't, but it just felt like they were kind of cramming those 4 episodes into 25, 22 minutes or whatever it turned out to be.
Right.
From there, we wrap up. You mentioned earlier about Hunter gets that line about how they're kids, but they don't get to be because of the current situation of the galaxy. Which I would think at some point they got to find a planet where they. Yeah, no, that's part of the whole theory, right? You can't run away from the Empire; they're always going to catch up with you at some point. So
right.
But there is a line that, and this is where my crazy theories start, because Yana says, "When a young one leaves, the trees weep." Right. So assuming that's when Gunji left, but when he returns, the trees sing. And then she says, as this child has found, I can't even read my own writing here. As this child has found a new home, perhaps one day we will all find a new path. So this is when she said this. Up until this point, I was thinking, oh, okay, we're done here, right? We're never going to see this character again. But at some point, and I won't get into this whole theory because I don't want to make this a 2-hour show. But if Filoni wanted to come back, right, and let's say we fast forward to the Mandoverse or wherever. First off, if you don't know, Wookiees live for freaking ever, right? Hundreds of years. So this character Gunji, if he's still around, well, he is still around. But I'm saying, depending, you could throw him in any timeline that we've got so far up until the Rise of Skywalker, right? And he still could potentially be alive. But you have a character now who is a Jedi, and you could insert him in a lot of different places. If you needed somebody during the Mando verse or whatever with maybe Luke Skywalker, maybe there's an opportunity for, Omega to still be around, or there's talk of there was a Wookiee one time that was taken to Kashyyyk and returned to Kashyyyk, and you've got to seek him out, or they need a Jedi for whatever reason. He's got they've got an out here where they could pull a Jedi out of nowhere, right? As long as the right people knew about it, which right now would be the Bad Batch and essentially Omega. So I do wonder if at some point they are going to pull that lever, whether it's again in the Mandoverse set in post the post Empire, or maybe even further down the road with the Rise of Skywalker. There's a lot of potential here for this character to come back.
Yeah, I agree. It's a character that people love. I think it makes sense for the Bad Batch because it's so connected to Clone Wars. So how it would fit into some of those other content would be interesting. I don't know that we come back and revisit this character in Bad Batch though, or Kashyyyk. I think there's enough going on Kashyyyk where taking people away, taking Wookiees away from that planet to help elsewhere doesn't make a lot of sense, especially with all of the things we know are happening to Kashyyyk, but also what will happen to Kashyyyk. And it just doesn't make sense that we would start taking people unless they were having to rescue. But
Right.
again, that starts to change kind of the tone of the show, and Jedi start becoming more prominent potentially. And so I have a feeling we probably don't come back to it here in the Bad Batch either.
But I'm with you. I don't mean to cut you off, but just since we're kind of segueing into these final questions, I had that question in here about whether or not we would see Gunji either this season or in the series. I'm with you. I don't think we do. If he ever does pop up, I think it's going to be much later down the road, and maybe not that much later, but certainly not part of the series.
Yeah, I agree. I think it would be interesting to see him come back in a kind of more in like a sequel trilogy or sequel trilogy era. So even post Mandalorian, I like Mandalorian steering clear of Jedi in particular. I mean, we've got enough of it with Grogu. We've had some of it with Luke. It was really cool. It was great to see a little bit of closure for us in some ways, but also let that focus on Grogu and go from there. Although it would be an interesting thing again, even 20 years later, Wookiees are still pretty young in that regard. So that would be an interesting dynamic there. But yeah, I think for our purposes here in Bad Batch, it seems low chance that we'll come back to it. And again, I don't know that it's necessarily needed because we have a lot of other things going on, with just the internal conflict of the Bad Batch with Crosshair, and then of course with Cody, and then of course whatever's going on with Rex and what Rex wants them to use for, and then where does that start to steer you a little bit too as we get through towards the end of the season?
Yeah. So the question I had in here was what happens to Gunji from here, given, again, the Empire doesn't know that he's around. How would you feel, and this is purely hypothetical, but how would you feel if at some point, again, going back to what we've been bringing up over and over again, at some point, Filoni, they announced that, hey, they have some kind of major event that they're kind of gearing towards. And we've thrown a lot of different ideas out there in terms of what that could be. But how would you feel at some point if they came back to a post Return of the Jedi, Luke's, and not the Mandoverse, right? I'm with you there. Like that just kind of needs to be its own self-contained story, and they can that, and then having the tales of Jedi Luke, right, and rebuilding the Jedi Temple and all of his students. If they turn that into like this mini Clone Wars 2, I'm going to call it Clone Wars 2 because I don't know what else to call it right now, but it's really focused on Luke, the Jedi Temple. It's very heavy Jedi. In addition to, fighting and kind of fending off the beginnings of the First Order, right? And they turn that into like this Clone Wars series. And whether it's, 1 season, 5 seasons, 6 seasons, whatever it is, but something like that, would you be in for that, where they're like going back and picking up people and saying, oh, we got to start this over. And at some point he finds out, oh yeah, there's Gunji's out there on, Kashyyyk, and he brings him over to the Jedi Temple, and that's how we get him in there. Would you be on board with something like that? Because it would give everybody finally the Luke Skywalker they all kind of want to see, right? Stop crying. We're going to get him at some point. I may not see it. I'll probably be dead when it happens, but they're going to bring that back. Okay. But it would also give us it would flesh out some of those early developments of what happened with Snoke, the First Order, how they came to be, the power, how did the temple fall? They could bring in a Kylo Ren. It's animated, or, not Kylo Ren, but, Ben Solo. There's a lot of potential there and just uncharted territory that they could do that with.
I like dialogue for Ben Solo. That's uncharted territory as well.
You're such a jerk.
Well, I had to do it. This is an area that is really tough because the sequel trilogy has painted us into such a corner of restriction of what we can do.
Mm.
Because what we're made to believe is that Luke's temple was probably younger kids or younger students, not adults, maybe adolescents at best. Something like that. That they weren't seasoned veterans, right? They weren't older. They weren't your Kyle Katarns, or they weren't a Gunji, 30, 40 years later, or whatever it might have been, right? These were still younger students, and so to bring in others and say we need to fight the First Order, which no one knows about at this time. So because again, we learned that from Leia, like no one really gives a lot of credibility to the First Order from a power perspective and a fighting perspective.
Yeah, they didn't have a strong presence yet.
Yeah, exactly. It's just really hard to see how that any of that actually works and fits together within the canon that we know. And so I hesitate. I hesitate even bringing it up because it can really spawn an entire negative conversation about Star Wars in general and how it's where it's gone and what that era of Star Wars kind of looks like. To the point where I'm like, man, how do we break away from that and focus on something different? This is where something like Skeleton Crew, at least in theory, is. Can that something like that be different enough, operate somewhat outside of the norms that we're used to, and be something fresh and different and stand alone and still feel like it's integrated somehow and that it's still part of it? That's what I would love to see, for characters like Gunji or for any of these other ones that survive, like, an Ezra.
Yeah.
How do they come back and fit in without necessarily feeling like we're going to have all of the retcon conversation about the sequel trilogy in the meantime,
Right.
that we're changing things and we're trying, and then we have the whole polarizing thing come around. It's just so loaded. It's so tough to get there, and there's great stories. I mean, I like where you're going though with, there's a lot of opportunity there, but I'm also like, man, I just don't know if I want it at this point. Cause I just don't know if I want to deal with it, like the after effects of it.
Right.
So I'm probably just a bit jaded, due to the fandom and kind of the responses that we've had over the years, but that kind of scares me a little bit.
Yeah, it's like we said earlier. It's all optimism over here, and you keep me grounded and checked in reality here. Rob says, "Yeah, sign me up." He says, or Luke goes out and finds old Jedi to get advice from, because we know they're out there now. So,
True.
Sabayoth could show up at some point, and we get the whole heir to the Empire.
Right. I found your hand.
Found your hand. Oh, and here's Mara Jade. We found her too.
Right, and here's your other Luke.
More clones. Okay, well, more on that later. I'm not putting this one to rest. At some point, we'll bring it back up. I will will it to existence in some way, in some form, at some point. So I guess kind of a general question, like, so what was the purpose of this episode? I mean, it's a very sincere question. I think we need to ask ourselves at the end of every one of these episodes, what was the purpose of it? Because I think with Filoni, there's always a purpose outside of redemption, outside of a Gunji spotlight, planting seeds for future appearances, content, all that stuff. Is there anything more to that? Do you think that's kind of where
it's the same trend we've seen a couple of other times, while very subtle and very, subdued. It's more like this is the direction the Bad Batch are going. This is Echo and Hunter, in the Omega factor of this crew having a much more focused and narrowing focus around what their purpose is and about what they're okay doing. And so, yeah, they're trying to go out and kind of make a living or find a way to live and find a way to survive and, maybe retire. I don't know. But still, when things are presented to them, the Bad Batch are becoming the A-team. They're becoming more of this group of mercenaries for good and trying to do the right thing when they have the opportunities to do the right thing. And so I think it's just another stepping stone is kind of what I took from it, from more of take a step back and look at the entire landscape of where the series is going. And to me, it's just another step, for Echo in particular, I think. And again, subtle, very, very subtle, but I think is an important one. And that's why I made a point a couple of different times to point Hunter out, is that he's not hesitating anymore.
Yeah.
He knows what he wants for Omega, but at the same time, these are the right thing. And this is what Omega wants. This is what my team wants. So if he's the father of the team, not just Omega, but he's kind of the father of the team, he feels he's responsible for everyone on this team. So he wants what's best for everyone, but at the same time, he knows that them hiding and not doing the right thing, like that would rub the team the wrong way and kind of break the family up in a totally different way. So maybe not overtly coming out and saying, yeah, rah, 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 we're against the Empire, sign us up, Rex, we're going to do all of this. But when presented the opportunities, you start to see them making those choices and making those decisions with less and less hesitation and less consideration for the for the side effects of that, and not worrying as much about, oh gosh, I don't want that for Omega, type of thing.
Right. Yeah.
So I think that's what it's showing us. I think that's what it's doing, and I think the pacing of how they're doing that, I actually think is a good thing. I like how they've done that. They are taking that time to do it. So, but I think that's kind of what the overall direction is. That's what they're showing us here.
Right. And going to the chat, the question of what was the purpose of this episode, Rob says, letting us know that Rambo was actually Hunter. He looks more and more and acts more and more like Rambo in every episode. I would agree there.
Right.
And Miss Sunflower won't let it go. She says, letting us know that Omega is force sensitive. So I appreciate that. So thank you for that. So I guess maybe kind of our last question.
I don't know what you pay some of the people who chime in.
Oh, it's a lot. My gosh, that's where all our Patreon money goes. It just goes right back to their pockets.
we said it goes right back to everything.
Yep, we said it goes right back to the show. It literally goes right back into their pockets so that they continue to feed my crazy theories here. The question that I have, though, to kind of, I guess the final question is, we've six episodes now in. We're past the 1/4 mark, approaching the halfway mark. How would, if you had to grade the first 6 episodes, A, B, C, whatever you want to get, whatever system you want to use, but how would you say that is, how these have bode for you?
I'm going to pull it into 2 buckets.
Okay.
Maybe you can do this with me here.
No.
When I look at the overall entertainment and how much I've enjoyed watching the episode, and are they fun? And is it, am I smiling when I'm watching it? Am I laughing? Am I getting the feels? All of those things. From an entertainment factor, I think it's like B+, A-. I mean, really solid to really good, like to pretty good. Now, when I look at the overall narrative and overall, what are the things that have we got a lot of really heavy hitting, hard hitting moments, Crosshair and the Bad Batch and tough decisions and, Palpatine's presence. No, probably closer to like a B-, maybe on that lower side of that, still solid. And I want to give, and it's probably a little bit higher than that when I consider the Cody Crosshair episode,
right.
And again, but if just to be fair though, like when you take that out of it and you just look at the enjoyment aspect of it, the enjoyment factor is really high for the series. But it's a matter of, does it feel like we're really pushing the story at a really notable pace? For me, it's working, but I could also see from those real emotional moments that we know they can give us and know they can deliver on because they've done it before. Those they haven't got to us yet. Yeah. And I think the episode that probably disappoints me a little bit in that regard, I probably still had higher expectations of the opener, for the season premiere. Now, episode 3, man, good stuff, right?
Yeah,
some of the best, if not the best that we've had in a long time.
Right.
But some of the others have just not quite delivered on that aspect of things, And so if I were to break them into, that's kind of where I would go, kind of a low B, all the way up to is potentially like an A-, something like that, just enjoyment factor. And put those together, I'm really excited to see what that can look like.
Yeah. I'm with you. Like I would grade the first 6 episodes in those same buckets because, like you said, on one hand, right, am I enjoying the episodes? Heck yeah. Is there a lot of shiny to these episodes? Yes. From a technical perspective, it's been great visually, great audibly, right, sound, the sound effects, the music, all that stuff is working. Really great stuff. And I was just thinking about this today too. Like,
production's like A+.
Yeah, that's what I was saying. Like I have. You'd be hard pressed to find something that's on Netflix or any of the other paying services that is putting the level of quality into the production that we're getting from Disney Plus in season 2 of the Clone Wars, right? And I say that as a non-shill or as a shill, however you want to look at it. That said, if I'm grading just the enjoyment factor, I would say it's probably an A- as well. Like I've enjoyed these episodes. There's not been one that I've been like, oh, that sucked. The low point for me was probably the opener because it was 2 episodes and they probably could have condensed it. But did I still enjoy the episode? Heck yeah, I really enjoyed it.
I look at Faster was a really good example of that.
Yeah.
I thought I was going to hate Faster, to be honest with you. I thought it was going to be a waste of time and just dumb. And that episode was just so much fun. It was funny. It was everything. I mean, it was just these things you didn't expect it to be.
Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt.
Now, no, I agree. And now, but if I'm grading this on the, okay, where did we leave off at season 1? How much have we gotten? The Solitary Clone is kind of on an island in itself. And had it not been for that, I mean, I would put this at a D in terms of like,
it'd be
what
tough.
are we doing here? Right. It's great that they stuck that episode in there but for me, I still think it's probably like a C plus, right on that level, because we really haven't gotten a whole lot. I mean, it's been fine. We've gotten characters and we've gotten some development. And there's been little, tidbits here thrown at us from time to time. So I have enjoyed all that, but it really hasn't been, there's been nothing really, again, the Solitary Clone notwithstanding, it has not been anything really super substantial in terms of everything we really want to know about, the end of season 1, right?
Mhm.
That said, again, looking at these titles and looking ahead over the next 6 to 8 episodes, it looks like we're going to be in for a week after week kind of continuous more episodes that are similar in tone to the Solitary Clone. I think we're going to get some of that stronger mythos canon stuff that we're looking for, the pickup from season 1 for quite some time, which is good because I think we need it at this point. I think if they could continue to do this would start to feel very formulaic and kind of, we've already seen this, done this, and why are we still here doing this? And they're not advancing that main, storyline over again. We're just getting more monsters of the week. I can see where all that criticism would come from if they didn't give us that. And looking at the titles, The Clone Conspiracy, Truths and Consequences, the titles alone are ominous. You could, infer a lot of things from both of those. But the fact that they're giving both of those to us here in just like 2 days, I think we're in for a 4-hour show come Thursday.
Yeah, you might be very right. I mean, and again, we go back, you could pull so much just by looking at the Clone Wars. Look at the pacing of the Clone Wars and how they approached it. And this is Clone Wars Part 2.
Yeah.
I mean, it's very consistent with that material, and it's very much like I mean, we all know I'm a Republic Commando book fan, right?
No.
And this
go on.
But this was similar, right? So you had the first 3 books, they were Republic Commando, and then the 4th one was Order 66. And then after that, the last one was 501st, an Imperial Commando novel. And when you think of it like in that kind of context, that's what Bad Batch feels like.
Right.
You had Clone Wars, and then now you have Bad Batch. Extension of the same material, extension of the similar characters, maybe a little bit different, perspective and view and flavor.
Yeah.
But still the same type of content.
Right. Thematically, it's the same. Yeah.
Yes, that's a great way of putting it. The same thematic, essence to it. And so I like that we're getting that, and that consistency is still there. It feels like it's the same connected content because it is, and so it's great that we still get that.
Right.
And these lighter episodes of these things that, that have good moments to them, but they're more enjoyable and they're fun. I think this is important to have now because you can't be heavy and dark all the time because that wears on you, especially for an animated, it's still a bit of a kid's show, right? I won't call this like for children, but I would say this is it's supposed to be approachable by kids.
Right.
Right. And so I think for that, it's important to keep those elements still alive, even though we will get to some heavier moments here really soon. I'm with you. I think these next 2 are particular. And again, you start to see the slate go down. I think more often than not, as we go through this, it's at least going to be 50-50 ball for these types of episodes coming for the rest of the way, through the end.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think
that's good. I think that's a
right.
good mix there. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I was going to say something similar. By the time we get to the 16th episode, I think we'll find there's probably a healthy balance if we're, objectively looking at it and holistically looking at all of the episodes, all 16 of them. I think we're going to feel like, okay, this was really kind of a balanced season because there's going to be some heavier moments. I mean, no one's going to complain if we get 6 episodes that are super heavy on, cloning and, Rampart and all,
right.
Cody and whoever else they bring back. So,
right.
That's definitely looks like.
But overall, I'm really enjoying this season. I think I'm enjoying this season more than season 1. And
Yeah,
I don't even
so.
think it's a think. I think I'm pretty sure I think I am. Just this far into it, I think it's just really good. They've done a really, really good job, and
Right.
it was worth the wait as far as I'm concerned. Because remember, this has been delayed a bunch of times.
Yeah, this is like the 4 episodes that they just could never make it out. They couldn't get over the hump with these. They did, there were a number of them they've already done. There's still some that have never been done. We've seen the rough drafts.
Yeah, Crisis on Utapau.
Yeah. the book with Ahsoka. I'm sorry.
Oh, Dark Disciple.
Yeah, Dark Disciple of Ventress, right?
Oh,
I'd love to see that eventually done.
That would be,
but
that would have to be a mini series. Like they could make that like a 6-part, 8-part mini series, and that would be cool. Fantastic.
There's some such
because that book is just so good. Yeah, that book is so good.
Yep. Just do it. Just listen to it,
please.
So okay, overall, enjoy the episode. I'm ready for. I think I've had my fair share of Monster of the Weeks and getting reacquainted and nice little character buildups here and there moments. But I'm ready for the more meatier stuff. Yeah, give me Crosshair, give me Rampart, give me the clone conspiracy, give me clones, bucking up against the Empire now and what that's going to look like. Give me the clone. What would it be? I guess an overtaking, etc. I want to see all that stuff. Just give it to me. We're ready for it.
Yeah, we're ready to see what's the legacy of the clones.
Yeah,
I guess, and what's the future look like? I mean, what does the end look like? I mean, all these things are really exciting. We're going to get there. I'm hoping all of those things get delivered to us this year. It'll be really interesting. We get to episode 16 and we look back at that next week. We usually kind of do a recap and did it hit all the things we wanted to? It'd be really interesting to see what there. But you know what's interesting, Albert? All the people that joined us in the live stream tonight, amazing people. If you're listening to this, we'd love for you to come out and visit us, cantinacast.com/YouTube. You can subscribe to the channel if you'd like to. Hit the notification, be notified when we're live, and even when we're going to be delayed going live, you'd get all the updates. You can also find them over at cantinacast.com. Again, Jedi Marvel Archive, all that good stuff is out there as well. But tonight in the chat, Dale, Steph, Lauren, I have emotional evolution. A lot of words there. Jonathan, Nase, Jeff, Rob, Miss Sunflower, Heart Countered, Jackson, Abbott coming in there at the end. So we appreciate everyone, all the lovely chat tonight. Miss Sunflower, please stop feeding Albert's obsessions, please. You're on notice.
Yeah, you're on notice now.
Yeah, no, sincere thank you. We love all the interaction and hope more people will come out and check us out.
Yep. Again, just plugging Jedi Novel Archives. Please comment and share that with your friends, family, whoever it is, so that we can get more exposure to the great stuff that Lauren is pumping out there on YouTube. Again, thanks everybody for coming out. And just as a reminder, we'll be back here in 2 days to talk about the clone conspiracy, truth and consequences. Hold on to your socks, because although I don't know any spoilers, there are a lot of people that have seen these episodes that we are friends with, and all I keep hearing is just wait. That's all they're telling me. So, could be hype, but I trust these guys. So I think we're going to get some really meaty stuff here. It's going to be a good conversation here in just a few days. So
looking forward to it. Yeah.
Yep. All right. With that, we will see you guys in just a little bit.
You're still listening? Wow, that's amazing. Well, I'm here to give you the disclaimer. Normally we do a big, long, drawn-out disclaimer thing saying what's what and who's what and all that other stuff, but I think you guys kind of know that Lucasfilm and Disney have no affiliation with us at all, and we have none with them. We talk about Star Wars, which is their property, and all that other good, fun stuff, but I think you can tell which is our stuff and which is their stuff. If you can't, well, then send a lawyer to send an email to me, and I'll be glad to chat with them. Other than that, you know what's what, so that's your disclaimer.